Hello, I'm Farrell. This is Tally. We are bored of it, and today we're reviewing a real enigma of a game, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, for 1 to 5 players. This is a terrifyingly thematic, exceptionally engaging, and at times immensely infuriating game. It's 5 fantasy flight and set in their Lovecraftian universe, and it's going to see you solving mysteries, solving murders, and also fighting cosmic horrors.
Each game will have you choose one of the available scenarios and play with your chosen character. Maybe you'll be exploring a creepy old mansion, looking for clues regarding an arcane ritual, or maybe you'll be on the run from some scary monsters in a spooky coastal town.
Yep, and important to note, this game is app-driven.
You'll begin by picking an available scenario in the app and then inputting the characters that you've chosen. The app will then spit out some starting items that you get and away you go. The map will be built out as you play the game and usually starts with a single tile. On your turn, you get 2 actions, and for most of the game, these are going to be move, which allows you to move 2 spaces, and what we call interact, which allows you to interact with the tokens that are littered across the board, which indicates something of interest or new areas to explore.
You'll start out with very limited information. You probably won't really know what's going on. So what you're going to be doing in terms of gameplay is you're going to be moving around the map, revealing the map, exploring, discovering clues, maybe talking to people or fighting monsters, depending on the scenario. And eventually you'll hopefully get an idea of what is going on, and there'll usually be something you have to stop or do. And there's always a secret timer in the background counting down. So you have a limited amount of time to do it in. And if you don't get it done in that amount of time, you'll fail and you'll get some kind of story ending that is not good for the world. Once all the players have had their 2 actions, it'll be the mythos phase, which is the standard phase where bad stuff happens to everyone. This is where monsters are going to activate, they'll chase after you, and maybe just some horrific random events. And you'll continue in this way, alternating between player turns and mythos phases, until either the players complete the scenario or they fail it because the time has run out. Alternately, you could lose somewhere in the middle because a player dies, in which case you have 1 turn to complete the scenario, or else you lose.
The app runs the game, telling you what tiles to place, where to place tokens, what the monsters are up to, along with keeping track of all kinds of bits and pieces. The app is deeply integrated into the game and you'll spend a lot of time clicking through it. As we alluded to at the beginning of this review, Mansions of Madness is a bit of a weird proposition. There are many rough edges, but it's almost unparalleled in terms of theme and player interaction. Some of the scenarios run 2 hours plus, but it certainly doesn't feel like it. The characters, the artwork, the story, and even the background noises in the app all work together to effortlessly draw you into the world of horror.
And Mansions of Madness makes it rather easy to roleplay, and this means there's more player engagement and, importantly, more fun. The characters are well fleshed out and individualistic. The items are full of character and the scenarios full of mystery and great storytelling. The best part about this game is that it's basically just Scooby-Doo the board game, because you're usually exploring a mansion, finding clues and solving mysteries. There's just more existential horror and real monsters than in Scooby-Doo. But I mean, who doesn't want to play Scooby-Doo the board game?
A key element of what makes Mansions of Madness so great and what keeps players involved is its simplicity. There are about 10 actions that you can do, but it's likely that for about 90% of the game, you are just going to be moving and interacting with tokens. It makes playing light, breezy and simple, so it really allows you to focus on the mood, the story and the role-playing. We introduced this to a friend on Halloween and we can honestly say that Farrell only had to explain for about 2 minutes and then we were able to jump right into playing. It's really easy to introduce to others So it is almost a shame that they are likely going to get gobbled up by an otherworldly horror. We really enjoy how all of the items and spells are thematic and at times darkly humorous. You get a nice little progression because you'll be collecting different bits and bobs, which means as the game goes on, you'll have more options, but you'll also likely become more and more injured and more unhinged, so it's a nice balance. All of the characters have special abilities and different stats, so it's really fun to mix them up and see how the scenarios can turn out differently.
And all of this combines to make Manchester Madness a game that facilitates some great table talk. You know, the fact that you're all in this together means that you're going to have a lot of discussion about how to divide and conquer, who's going to go where, maybe the best way to defeat an enemy, and even how to help each other out. And we found that this is a better co-op proposition than, say, Eldritch Horror or some of these other Arkham horror games, just because, as we said before, of how kind of fluid and interactive and dynamic it is, whereas those can get a bit bogged down in round structure and rules and what you can and can't do.
Turning to the app, it's okay. It's not the best app in a board game, but it is pretty solid, which is important because it carries most of the game, to the point where you could pretty much just play within the app. So if you don't like apps in board games, then this is not going to be for you. One good thing about the app is that it randomizes parts of the scenario, such as the layout and minor story beats, so it does provide more replayability than other scenario-driven games. As an example, in a murder mystery, each time you play, the murder will be different, so it gives you a different puzzle to solve.
Another way the replayability is increased is through the difficulty. Unsurprisingly for an Arkham horror game, Manchester Madness is tough as nails, and you probably are not going to win the first time you play a scenario, just because there's a timer, and you'll almost certainly waste too much time figuring out what is going on, getting the layout of the place, following kind of red herrings and false clues. So even when you do know what you're doing, you still are going to need a pinch of luck to successfully complete the scenario, because you're going to have everything going against you. Horrific events, terrifying monsters, and also just finding the right things on the map. Before we go any further, we have to talk about the mammoth in the room, the price and the sales model of Manchester Madness. Because new, you're not likely to get this for less than £70. And to be quite frank, it's not really worth that. I mean, the base game comes with 4 scenarios. 4. And I know we said it's replayable, but it's not that replayable. And maybe you'll say, well, what about the miniatures? Aren't there a lot of miniatures? Yeah, but they're widely regarded as kind of not great and pretty useless. And it's not that they're necessarily bad miniatures, it's just that they have a really stupid system. You have to pop them onto these little plastic trays, which honestly, they don't work too well. They tend to fall off. It's a bit tedious and annoying. And in these trays, you're supposed to pop in the monster details on the bottom, but it inevitably is covered up by the actual miniature, so then you can't see pertinent information. So even if you like miniatures, I don't think you're going to be happy with these, because they're not really the ones that you can paint and just put out somewhere on a shelf. What the game is really crying out for is removing the plastic, cutting the price, and just having the already existing monster tiles on little stands, which gives you a nice picture and allows you to easily see all the pertinent information. There's this general aura of trying to put as little as possible in the box for as much money as possible, and it's a bit annoying. And one example of this that really pisses me off is that they've only included, and remember, this is a game you paid £70 for, 5 dice in the box. Do you know what you do every turn? And something that probably every player will do at least once, if not more around? Roll dice. So what this means is that you have to constantly pass the dice around the players. And let me tell you, hour 3 of a game, when it's slowing down the game because you're having to reach over and pass it, who needs how many, it gets really tedious and annoying. And I just don't know why, they couldn't have had double, triple the number. I mean, it's dice, right? And when you come to the expansions, things get even more abhorrent, because they're basically just designed to price gouge you, because you're paying the price in some cases of a normal game, in other cases more than a normal game for the expansions, and all you're getting is a sliver of new content. 4 new investigators, a couple of new tiles, maybe 3 scenarios. And what's worse is that some of the best content is in these expansions. So it's really tough proposition, because you're expecting people to pay another £50 on top of a game they already paid £70 for, just to get some longevity out of it.
But this isn't a perfect game. There are certainly annoyances. There's a big element of luck, which isn't necessarily a negative, but it can be frustrating. In our last game, my character's special ability was to reroll 1 dice per round, and not once, not a single time, did any of those rerolls land on a success. Interacting with the map can also be frustrating at times, because whilst it's fine that you don't have time to interact and explore everything, the game can be remarkably unhelpful in letting you know what might be important. So this means you could find everything you need for a scenario quite early on, just by luck, or never find one of the items that you need before you run out of time and lose. Also, it's not well balanced for low player counts. Sure, the in-game timer does increase, but it's still much slower to explore with just 2 people, and you're worse off in terms of diversity in skills and abilities. Not to mention, it's much easier to combat when you've got multiple people beating down on a monster. It is a little annoying that it isn't better addressed, but we do just get around it by playing with 2 characters each. Then, and this is a personal thing, for us the combat is a little bit bland. You just roll the dice that the app tells you, then input the result. And it can sometimes feel like the combat is in the way of the actual fun. So for us, sometimes the very combat-heavy scenarios can feel like a bit of a slog, whereas the investigational ones are a joy. Important to note, though, that some people really love the combat-heavy scenarios and getting to shoot a monster in the face with a shotgun, so take this with a pinch of salt.
Final thoughts. We really want to recommend this game, but it's a tough one. We love the mystery, we love the intrigue, we love the storytelling. It's great how the rules are simplistic, allowing players to just kind of dive right in and start role-playing without worrying about too much rules overhead. But if we're being honest with ourselves, it's probably not worth the price tag, particularly because so much of the game is on the app. You could almost jerry-rig it to download the app for free and figure out a way to play the game just through that.
Yeah, and you get 4 scenarios, one of which is the introductory one, which is the most boring one, not to mention the components. And even more frustrating, some of the best scenarios are in the expansions, and we probably would fully recommend the Horrific Journeys expansion if it wasn't for the price. So if you're interested, maybe try to get Mansions of Madness secondhand or give it a go at a board game cafe. And that was our review of Mansions of Madness. If you enjoyed this video, we'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you're not already, and please feel free to ask us anything about the game down below in the comments.
Or tell us your favourite scenario.
Yes.
Favourite character, etc. We're going to go because the dogs are going mad. We've got
2 monsters here that we need to...
I was going to say, I think they're going mad. See you next time.
Bye.